Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
The preeminent interest across the world among the strategic community, foreign policy planners, and political leaderships is in one country, and that one country is China. That is a no-brainer because China is now risen to be the new center of gravity, the second center of gravity, as used to be the case during the Cold War, to America. So America's decline and China's rise have taken place simultaneously. It's a situation where 15 years from now, as Xi Jinping has dreamed, it's plausible that China could become the preeminent power, leaving behind America. If that happens, it has complications and implications for the rest of the world, especially for India, which does not have the friendliest, the warmest relations with China. Forget the Jhula in Ahmedabad and forget the walk around the Mamallapuram temples. Forget all that because all that is so much water down the drain. America has a big change now. A new administration has come in. Trump had sounded like he was now really turning on China, but he was more fury than action. What has now happened is, because America is not China, no democracy is China, but America also has a very rich tradition of sort of think tanking, which means people come up with ideas and those ideas then become talking points, and those ideas also set the agenda. For example, it was a paper in the Atlantic just as Ronald Reagan was coming into power that talked about a 700-ship American Navy. That idea, it may not have reached 700, but that led to a big expansion of American Navy that probably, most likely, played a role in the speedy end of the Cold War because this completely changed the balance, the power balance, military balance between the US and the Soviet bloc. Similarly, another paper has now emerged. This paper that has now emerged is in Atlantic Councils. Atlantic Council is a very respected institution, think tank you may call it. Atlantic Council's Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. Now, Scowcroft Center is named obviously after Brent Scowcroft, who was an Air Force general who served as National Security Advisor to two presidents, Gerald Ford and also George Bush Sr. In fact, he succeeded Colin Powell as NSA in George Bush Sr.'s White House. So, Brent Scowcroft died not long ago, died at the ripe old age of 95 just last year, and this center has been set up in his memory. Now, a paper has emerged here. It's a very detailed paper and I'm sharing it with you. Please read that. A paper has emerged there. I also shared in my weekly newsletter, which only our subscribers get. So if you're not a subscriber, please do become our subscriber. It costs very little. So that paper, another version of it, I posted from Politico magazine in my newsletter last Sunday. Politico magazine has a summary which is quite comprehensive, and then the link for the full paper also. It's a long paper. In fact, it is called the longer telegram. I will tell you why the longer telegram. But the most important thing is this paper is written by nobody, it seems, because it does not have a byline. It is something that we will not allow in the print, at least not conventionally. We have never done so, which is to allow someone to write anonymously. In fact, a person wrote for us under a pseudonym, and we asked the person to at least share with us the identity, and because he refused to do that, we decided not to publish the person anymore. But this article has been published under the byline of anonymous, and both Atlantic Quarterly and Politico say that they respect these authors. They obviously know who the author is. Author is a very experienced American policymaker or researcher, or maybe an American official. Now, much speculation can go on. But this paper sets out the agenda on China for Biden administration. It also tells us in the greatest detail what Xi Jinping is up to and how China has become the preeminent challenge of this century for America, and frankly I think by implication for any other country which is not already in China's co-prosperity sphere, if I may use that bad expression from the Second World War. So this paper is very interesting. An article based on this paper was published by The Print today. Please read that article. I'm sharing it with you. It's written by Tara Karta, who's a former director at National Security Council Secretariat. She writes a weekly column for us, and she's written her piece based on this longer telegram and has given you her analysis of what it means for India. In conclusion, her analysis is that this tells India that you are ultimately on your own. So first of all, learn to look after your own interests, and then the others will come to your support in a qualified way, because we are not treaty allies of America. So what does this paper say? So the first point this paper makes is, or the author of the paper makes, is that the rise of an increasingly authoritarian Xi Jinping is the single most important challenge for America. It does not say China, it says Xi Jinping. So to that extent, it's not so different from, say, George Pompeo's formulation that separate the party and the country. Xi Jinping is General Secretary of the party. President, if the party owns the country, let's talk about the party and not the country. So keep that wedge there. So that is what this author is also saying. And this obviously is an author who is a person carrying a humongous amount of weight for these two organizations to publish him or her anonymously. So the suggestion is that this means that America should be laser focused on Xi, his inner circle, and the Chinese political context where they rule. Try and read between the lines. What this means is, if I may declutter, that focus on Xi, focus at people around him, focus at the Communist Party's top leadership, look at the divisions there, look at the tensions there, and play the game there. So keep your laser focus on Xi Jinping if you want to learn to deal with China. Then the paper goes on to say, and this is in the very, very beginning, the key points, it says that if America's objective is to change China's decision-making processes, or basically China's conduct, then they have to be very careful. They need understanding, and they need understanding so that they can operate within their political strategic paradigm, which means don't just say, oh, China, I'm fed up of China, I'll do something terrible to China. You can't do it like that. You have to understand Chinese politics and then play the game within there. And then it goes on to say that all US policy that is directed towards changing China's behavior must revolve around this fact, or it will be ineffectual, which means play with Chinese Communist Party politics. So far, so good. Then the author, he or she, I might use any of these at some point of time, at different points of time, but because we don't know if it's a he or she. It says that China now under Xi Jinping has gone back to number one, the classical Marxist Leninist construct. So this is now purely a Communist Party run state, party owned state. Second, it says that the quasi Maoist personality cult is now there, and that includes elimination of all political rivals, and Xi Jinping is doing that. Next point, you have a situation now in China where private sector is flourishing, but the private sector has come under the political party's control, Communist Party's control. Jack Ma is a good recent example of that. So once again, this is state capitalism, the ultimate example of state capitalism. You can have a company, but the party will control it, and party will get done whatever it wants you to do. The paper says that in China, market reforms have stalled. Number 4, that this is a party, now a party government, party regime following unapologetic nationalism. Next point 5, it has used ethno-nationalism to build its power, that is Chinese Han nationalism. which leads to the next point, which is that this means that ethnic minorities are being crushed and are being victimized in a manner that more or less amounts to genocide. The paper uses the word genocide. Then the next point, China under Xi has become now a totalitarian police state. Then, while post Mao, Chinese leaders were risk averse because they thought they wanted time so China could grow in its stature, so they did not want conflict with any big power. Xi Jinping has changed that. Xi Jinping now says that I want an authoritarian system, coercive foreign policy, military presence well beyond my border. So unlike Deng, Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, who had a great stake in status quo. So they made China, post-Mao China, into a status quo power. This author says Xi Jinping's China is now a revisionist power. You know what that means? It means that you want to now change things in a big way. So he's not accepting living in a continuum from his predecessors. Then the author says, then Mr. or Ms. Anonymous says that US allies and likely democratic world, they are the ones, they will feel the harshest glare of Xi Jinping's China in this strategic environment. And here Xi Jinping is America's primary concern. To ignore this will be a peril, it will be a danger, because he is now risen as a threat to the entire democratic world. I'm still reading points from the paper, and mostly I will do that and give you some analytical points here and there. No opinion today. Then the author goes on to say that this is now the unsophisticated CCP, Chinese Communist Party, muscle power. So no need for any Lucknowi style niceties here and there. You know who the boss is. रिश्ते में आपके बाप होते हैं, हमारी बात सुनो, otherwise I send you to jail. Next point, there is a complete rejection of most post-Mao idea of collective responsibility or collective leadership in the Chinese Communist Party. It is now run by one party, so one person controls all the power and has now used anti-corruption laws to destroy any competition that might arise anywhere, and that is why everybody is worried. And then interestingly it says that this personality cult, which is the biggest since Mao, almost Mao-like personality cult, has also led to a seething anger and seething distrust and seething resentment within the party, and which is bound to have consequences. So that is where they want America to be playing its game. Then it lists China's weaknesses, because first of all, what is the threat from China? Then what are the weaknesses? Because that is where you then have to counter Xi Jinping if you want to counter Xi Jinping. So they say China's critical vulnerability lies in its economy, because Chinese Communist Party has a social contract with the people of China, which is that we guarantee you growth, economic growth, we guarantee to you more employment, we guarantee to you continuous improvement in living standards, and as long as that is happening, people have agreed to let the Communist Party have dictatorial power. That is the social contract. So the author says that if anything happens that causes China's economy to go into recession, it can be a trade war with the US, it can be a military war in the neighborhood, some issue over Taiwan or any of the neighboring countries. If that happens, that can affect China's economy. And if China's economy goes into recession, that means this social contract between the people of China and the Chinese Communist Party will then begin to fray, because essentially both sides are exchanging ransom with each other in exchange for giving what they want. Next, it says that Xi Jinping's China is using intelligence technologies, it's using coercive laws, coercive technologies, they become a surveillance state, they are using physical coercion against rivals, and this is leading to anger, fear, resentment within the party. So that is one more crack in the system, one more vulnerability. In contrast, the question is, how is America planning to counter it? So the author is very critical of America, The author says, look, a posture is not a strategy. And frankly, America does not even have a posture. We don't have an operating strategy about China. And it says that, just to say that we are going this terrible thing to China or block them here or ban them here because we are mad as heck with them, his words or her words, this is not going to work. This is not something that will be settled in one-liners which may impress people in a presidential debate. You need a comprehensive policy. And then the author says that many people say that what are you complaining about? There is a comprehensive policy. In 2017, a policy was passed by Trump administration called United States National Security Strategy, NSS 2017. This document also is not a detailed operationalized strategy, and the author says that within Trump administration also there were sharp differences on how to deal with China, and you cannot deal with China with poorly worded tweets or strings of tweets that nobody can decipher. That obviously is a crack at the Trump-Pompeo approach to China. Then it goes on to say that what America needs is a consistent, comprehensive operational strategy for dealing with the greatest challenge of this age, rather than a series of, as I said, disjointed and often unintelligible tweets. And the author goes on to say that things like this make US a subject of mockery around the world, and there is a bit by bit erosion of the hard-earned American political capital. And then the author sums up and says that America needs a comprehensive, systematic, serious operational strategy to deal with this level of authoritarianism in the national interest. And later they defined the national interest for America, which concerns the entire world, because America is still the preeminent power in the world. Then the author says that, look, how does Xi Jinping control everything? Because all of China's decisions, China's America strategy is run, it's a clear strategy. It is run by three organizations, three important organizations. One is the Central Military Commission. Second is the Chinese Communist Party Central Committee. And the third is the National Security Committee of the Party Center. And Xi Jinping sits on top of each one of these three. So there is no question of any altu-faltu on the one hand, on the other hand, what do you think, what I think. Everybody has their agenda clear and they are working along that agenda. And they know that Xi Jinping is going to be forever. Xi Jinping is at least expecting to be till 2035, which is his target for making China a much bigger power than America. It is at this stage that a mention of India comes in. In fact, the only time a mention of India comes in, there's Indo-Pacific later. And it says that as this goes on, Europe will probably become a battleground between the US and China, besides South China Sea and East Asia. Then it says this Xi Jinping China strategy towards Japan and India will be uncertain, and we don't know if they will be interested in de-escalating from where they have come now. Very important for India. And then it says that at the same time, the Chinese, because they know what's good for them, will also continue to cooperate with America and the rest of the world on issues like climate change and on issues like UN organizations, including IMF, World Bank, etc., etc., etc. Now, what should the US response be? So, US response very quickly, and it's very interesting because when you see this response, there's obviously a lot of military stuff there, it says. So on US response, the authors gave a bunch of red lines. So some of these are predictable, that any threat of a nuclear, chemical, biological attack on America, either from China or from any of the allies of China, particularly North Korea, will be a red line, and that is an attack on US and its treaty-bound allies. Remember, India is not a treaty-bound ally. America has 47 treaty allies. India is not among them. And I don't think India is in a hurry to be there because India likes strategic autonomy. Also, India lives in this very complex neighborhood. Next, it says that, so America needs a strategy to protect its 47 treaty allies. It has to enhance its own military power. It has to also help enhance their military power. And then the author says that America must ensure its predominance in the Indo-Pacific. So there is no mention of Quad here, but it says dominance, predominance in Indo-Pacific, and as we know, that has now become the main purpose of the Quad. And then you have to arm, he says America has to arm Taiwan, and then goes on to explain how the Chinese think. So the author mentions two Chinese terms. One is Zhonghe Guoli, that is Zhonghe Guoli. I'm spelling these out because my pronunciation, Chinese pronunciation, may not be right. The meaning, what this means is comprehensive national power, CNP. You find that many countries talk about CNP, comprehensive national power. The Chinese expression for this is Zhonghe Guoli. And the author says that while we may have started talking of these terms from the times of Karl von Clausewitz, the German military scholar, which was about 150 or 130 years ago, the Chinese thought on this preceded it, Clausewitz, by 2 millennia, by 2000 years. So then you're going right back to Sun Tzu and before and after. So Chinese have been consistent with this. And the author says that knowing that China is now becoming powerful, they have now begun to flex their muscles, first with Norway, Sweden, Singapore, smaller countries, then with middle powers like Canada and Australia, and now with the US too. And they think that another 10 years or so, and they will be militarily stronger than the US, or they want to be militarily stronger than the US. So by 2035, the US hands over the baton to China as the preeminent power, just as Britain had done with the US after the Second World War. Until then, Britain was the preeminent power, and then they handed over that baton to the US after the Second World War. So the author thinks that Xi Jinping is worried that America will not do this as readily as Britain had done after the Second World War. So he must have dominating economic and military power and its own alliances in the world to make America by then the deputy superpower. Now, more suggestions continue on there, and you read the whole paper and read the summary. I'm sharing both with you. It's very interesting. Even if you're not a policy nerd, even if you're not interested, you're not making policy, this is very interesting stuff, because this whole world right now is changing. It's being redefined by Xi Jinping. It is being redefined by Xi Jinping as no Brezhnev, no Stalin was able to do so. And Xi Jinping is now doing it, and you can see from this paper that America is really worried, almost scared. And then as the author lists priorities from America, it says that should not allow any Chinese expansionism in South China Sea, protect all of Japan's territorial integrity, including Senkaku Islands, make sure that dollar remains the global currency, make sure that America retains its domination over China in, very importantly, in artificial intelligence, because that will determine tomorrow who is the biggest power in the world, not just money or military armaments or mega tonnage of your nuclear weapons, it's technology. So protect American technologies, invest more in artificial technology, and also to watch the export of, control the export of semiconductors to China, because if the Chinese have to make their own semiconductors, those would be of an inferior quality, and they will not allow them to, they will prevent them from catching up with America and its allies on technology. And then there are 2 points which are again very interesting for India. One is simple, that America must prevent any Chinese territorial expansion. Now, this doesn't say territorial expansion only among America's treaty allies. So it doesn't say America must block any Chinese territorial expansion among its treaty allies, among America's treaty allies. It says any Chinese territorial expansion. So that brings neighbors like India into the picture. Second, very interesting, the paper says that America must continue to increase immigration, because immigration is very important for America, because America needs to keep increasing its population. Its population should not stabilize, should not come down, its population should stay young, because America should not fall into the trap of some of its allies I presume many countries in Europe, most countries in Europe and Japan have this problem. Their population is getting older and their people are getting fewer. So immigration is an answer to that. I know that this is a finger-licking prospect for people in many parts of India. The other thing that is said in conclusion, that America must consolidate and expand its alliances. Again, something for India to watch for, because India is an ally but not a treaty-bound ally. So in the years to come, or maybe months to come, India will have to make some decisions also. And if you read Tarakarta's article also, there are hints that India will also have to play a role and maybe persuade America to understand that they cannot be at odds with both China and Russia at the same time. They can't just gift Russia away to China. So those are things, those are dynamics that are now up in the air in global strategic environment. So we will conclude this discussion with this, except I will just tell you why this was called the longer telegram. That goes back to 1946. 1946, the great American strategic scholar and ambassador to Soviet Union, George Kennan, wrote a long telegram, an 8,000-word telegram back to Washington. That telegram later was published in Foreign Affairs magazine in 1947. It was also published anonymously. It was published under the byline X. George Kennan, of course, came back to rose as a strategic scholar, won a Pulitzer Prize for his books. Nevertheless, that cable set the agenda for the Cold War. That cable set the agenda. I'm sharing that cable also with you. That cable set the agenda for how America dealt with the Soviet bloc in the decades that followed. So the suggestion here is, if that was called the long cable. So suggestion is, if that was the long cable, this is the longer cable. So the pretense on the part of the author is that this should set the agenda for America's policy towards China in decades to come. That's why it's very interesting, and that's why we've taken some time talking about it.